Here so Kat can figure out where we're going. Good morning. It is Tuesday, February 17th, after a little holiday, Monday. So this morning's, of course, lots of fun around here. Thank you for those of you over the weekend that I chatted with instead of waiting till Tuesday morning to call me. But we are going to continue on the seller conversation regarding the exclusive right to sell. And if you were not here 2 weeks ago, because last week we had our office meeting, you would not be aware that 2 weeks ago I started this conversation. This is going over the ER as if I were talking, and I think my client's name was Matthew, I think is what I put in here. If I were talking to my client, and this is to give you an idea of that conversation about your exclusive right to sell. It, of course, can be for rent as well. But one of the things you've got to remember is that if you're just emailing over your listing agreements and purchase contracts and not actually going through them, the question is, are they actually reading them? Because if 3 minutes later you've received that signed package, you know they have not read through them. You know it takes longer than 3 minutes. So please work with me on this, and we are going to have to actually, well, we'll just go through quickly to get to the page. I thought I had moved this over. Unfortunately, I cannot see this on the side. Let's out of this. See if I can go over. Whoop, I was almost there. All right. So let's start with that screen. And this is where we left off, was section 7, which is broker authority with regard to the listing agreement. It is what your role is as a broker. And so what I'm explaining to my client here is, please understand that as the listing broker, I cannot be responsible for maintaining the property or its management. And in terms of Realty One Group, you cannot have that under separate contract because we do not do property management. So you cannot be responsible for these things. So, Matt, I just need to make sure, if you're not going to be living in the home, do you have someone that will be taking care of the home for you? Do you have landscapers? Do you have somebody that's checking on the inside of the home if you've left town, or are you going to be coming by and taking care of that? In terms of advertising, the owner, you agree that you're not going to do your advertising without my written permission. I have to make sure it's complying with fair housing regulations. I'll be doing the advertising. Part of what we talked about earlier was my marketing plan and how I plan to advertise this property. What I will be doing for you is making sure that this listing is in the MLS. That is the multiple listing service in Arizona. In this area, we call that the Arizona Regional MLS. And this is a database that other agents have access to. But in addition to that, other platforms online have access to that, so that your listing is visible across, all across the country and actually around the world. You're giving me the right to report the sale or rental of the premises and its price as being a part of this MLS. When it closes, I need to make sure that that is noted in there so that the public knows that this sold for whatever dollar price it is. And any of the terms of the transaction, including the sale price and financing, will be provided in the MLS and be provided to the MLS. Even if the premises is not listed in it, they may be provided. So if you decide we want to put that in there as the end. So we discussed this earlier, but we did talk about how you might want to handle this marketing. And one of the things is that you're going to allow me to market it in the MLS, or you don't, right? So you have the choice to choose if you do not want me to do this. If we don't do this and immediately market it to the entire population, the general public, I need you to sign this owner delayed and limited marketing election addendum. And part of the reason I need to do that is to make sure you understand if we get an offer before we go out to the general public, the purchase price offer you might receive may be lower than you would if you got full visibility by the general public. So I know we talked about it a little earlier. This is the spot where we're going to check this box. I've already pre-checked it for does from our earlier conversation, because when I met with my seller, I had this whole conversation of whether or not they're going to go on the market, whether we're going to be doing coming soon or not. But this is the section now. I'm going to repeat that to my client, making sure they're understanding. So again, this is where I've already pre-checked the box because you've already told me I can put that for sale sign up. But if, for instance, it was in a community that didn't allow the for sale sign, I would have to check the is not allowing that. And just you're acknowledging that once I put public marketing or a sign out front, it requires this listing to be put into the MLS within 1 business day. So just a reminder, we're going in the MLS. Now I know we're taking this listing today. We're going to do the delayed or limited marketing election right now because we're not going to go on the market for another, say, month while you're doing some finishing stuff. That's fine, but we're going to get this ER signed today. So I want to make sure you realize those work together. Now, you are allowing me to take photos. That's part of what we're waiting for you to finish some of the renovations so we can take those photos. And you're allowing me to put those photos in all different types of media. I can use it in social media. I can put it obviously in the MLS, and I can do print versions of the media as well. So, if there's anything you don't want me to photograph, now would be the time for you to tell me that. So I make sure when the photographer comes out that if you don't want particular photos that are on your wall, or I'm sorry, pictures that are on your wall photographed, you let me know. Because once these images are placed on the internet, unfortunately, I and you have limited control over them. So once they're there, those images can be used and reused. So again, if you don't want any images out there, please let me know before we put it on the MLS. You are granting me the right, and Realty One Group the right, to use these images not only now but in the future after the sale. So I just need to make sure you understand that, and we'll move on to the next section here. It's really important that we talk about the safety of your property. We use a lockbox system it's run by a company called Supra, but the point is it's a blue lockbox. I don't use combo boxes on any of my listings for your protection. If my seller is living there, I'm going to say, look, if you are currently living here, one of the things we need to make sure of, first of all, I want you to know that all these lock boxes are on a timer, or at least all of mine are. And that means nobody can enter before 8 a.m. or enter after 10 p.m. I can adjust that timing if you want. But if you're living in the property, I'm actually going to add an additional layer of security. I'm going to add something called a CBS code, which means anybody looking to look at the property, they may have their lockbox key access in their phone, but it actually won't work without them speaking directly to me. So I put an additional layer of protection there now. So agents, I just need to make sure you guys know that when you're talking about the CBS code, that you understand that you can publish that code, but then you've given up that control. So you absolutely, and you need to do this if you're not going to be around to take that call, you can put it into your aligned system. So when they get the approval, they get that number. I suggest if people are living in that home, you be very cautious about that. And that's when I personally use that CBS code. But what it does, and again, back to my client, this adds a level of protection. So if I know that you're in the house, nobody can just walk up and accidentally open that door and walk in, get the key and walk in the door. So I really hope that you will work with me on this. One of the nice things about this lockbox and the scheduling system we have access to called Aligned is that you can control access for when you want the property to be shown. I can work with you and block certain times. If you're a late sleeper and don't want any showings until 10 a.m., we can block all those morning time slots from 8 to 10. If you know that you're going to be having a birthday party for your kids, we can block a Saturday off, say that you're going to be having that party. And so that anybody looking at that schedule won't even be able to schedule anything there. I do caution you, if you need to have a delay time for that aligned programming for the showings of the home, I don't recommend you make it very long, because sometimes people need to get in. And if we block the time, they can't even schedule and say, hey, we're looking at this. I'd much rather have them try to schedule it and then be told no, and we can try to negotiate and figure out when they can get in, than have them just look at the day and see, I can't get in for 3 hours. That's not going to work. So we'll move on to the next thing. So just want you to know that the access to your house through this lockbox, our inspectors are usually able to get in there. The appraisers are usually able to get in there. Again, if you're living in the home, I'm going to put that CBS code on there. If you're not living in the home and we're okay with showings, we're just going to put the lockbox on there, and I can actually set it up so that they auto show and you're alerted to when those things are scheduled, but you don't have to approve them before they go in. You are allowing the use of the lockbox by different people. If you're living in the home, just a reminder, I know when we walked through, I did talk about this when we walked through, please make sure any medications, small jewelry, or small electronics that can easily be grabbed are put away so they're not easily accessible. And when I mean put away your medicines, please don't put them in your medicine cabinet or in the kitchen cabinet, which they're very likely to open up. Put them in a bin underneath, your shirts or something, or put them in the closet inside of a suitcase or something where they're not easily accessible by anybody. Okay. Now, this next one is really important. So when we're listed on the market, and if somebody is going to send an offer to you, when they get ready to send the offer to you, I need to know what you're going to allow me to disclose when the other agent calls me. Am I allowed to disclose their other offers, which could include, I'm going to say could include, sales price and terms of the sale, or rent prices, right? So the important thing here is, I believe in my years of doing real estate that it is important to let agents know if there are multiple offers, because I think it changes the mindset of the buyer, because if they're really interested, they're going to step forward. If they're not so interested, they may step backward. But I don't feel it's in your best interest for me to share what the price of those offers may be. And the reason for that is, in this particular market these days, we have a lot of investors that write offers. And so those investors are always looking for the best deal. And often we get those offers within, a couple of hours of listing your home. And you probably aren't going to respond to some of them. We can discuss that another time. But if we get another offer, say the next day, and I want to say we've received another offer, which is true, you may not be entertaining it, but you've received the offer, I certainly don't want to say it's for $100,000 less than your list price. So if you don't want me to tell the sales price, I want you to send me an email that says, Melissa, please share that we have other offers, but do not share what the sales price is. Now, the question is, do you want me to share any of the terms? So things about the term might be that it's a cash offer, that it is an FHA or a VA offer, or that there's a contingency on it. So you can let me know what of those you want me to share and what you don't want me to share. But the number one thing I want you to tell me is you don't want me to share the price. Again, I think it's really important to share that there are multiple offers. Then once you're under contract, I want to make sure that you understand you have the right to accept a second or subsequent offer from someone else. So let's say you go under contract, and I don't even remember the list price that we started this on, but let's say it's $500,000 and you go under contract at 475 and you get an offer for 485 and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I could have had 10 grand more." You can accept that offer, but it can't go anywhere until that first offer falls out. If that other offer falls out, right? The seller is not able, you're not able to cancel just because you get a second offer. So I need you to understand that, but you can accept it. They go in backup position. If anything should happen to that first offer, then they're automatically put into first position. Great place to be to have a backup offer there. Usually they call to find out where we are in the process. If we're already gone through the inspection period, it's highly unlikely that the buyer's going to cancel at that point. But if we're in the middle of the inspection period, that secondary offer could give you leverage on what you may or may not want to agree to do for that first buyer. So we'll go over that if we get another offer, but I just want you to know that you can accept backup offers. Now, if you want us to accept backup offers, I need to know that, and I check this box for accept backup offers. I preset my form for withhold verbal offers, and the reason for that is I receive a lot of calls during the day, and I just want to make sure I'm protecting the integrity of any of those offers. And by your instructing me to withhold the verbal offers, I'm able to say to those other agents, I'm not able to present a verbal offer, but if you'd be willing at least to send me an email with your basic terms of your offer, then I will present that to my seller. And this is, so I'm going to step away from my owner here for a second and talk to you guys as agents. This is a protection thing for me. I do get way too many calls in a day. And the problem is if you go from call to call and somebody says, "Hey, Melissa, this is Joe. I want to offer on your 123 East Main Street, and I'm going to offer you, 450, and or hey, I'm going to offer you 495, but I didn't bother to tell you it's a contingent offer," right? He's not saying that to me, just saying, "I'm going to offer you 495. We want to close in 2 weeks." Well, obviously it's not going to be contingent, a 2-week close, but the point is you don't know all of the things, right? You don't know all those details. And I say, "Okay, Joe, thanks very much." Trying to jot this down. My phone rings again, take a different call. And then my phone rings again. And I'm like, wait, who called? Wait, where was it Joe? Who was that? And I don't know who it was. And I haven't written down all that stuff, and I've taken 2 more calls. So that's me. It may not be you. You may not get many calls during the day, and that's fine. But if you are going to take a verbal offer, you better get down who that agent is, what company they're working for, or if they're not represented, you need to know these things when you present to your client those details. So I just check the withhold verbal offers and say, "Look, you're really interested in the property. At least send me an email," right? Because I'd like to know a few other things. And I say to them, "Please put in all the details of your offer." Would have been nice if they just used our offer form. But if you're too lazy to do that, at least it's on the buyer then, the buyer's agent, to get me that detail, not for me to remember it and get it to my client. So that's my take on that. It's your choice. I just need to make sure that you're presenting exactly what was said. And here's the problem. You got to hope that they remember what they told you. Because how many offers do you think they're making? Because if they're doing a bunch of these verbal things, I can bet they're calling a whole bunch of people. So do they even remember what they told you their offer was? Because at some point, it's got to get into writing. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to my client here. This next section, the next line just talks about that I have to maintain the MLS per the board rules. So that's meaning when we go under contract, I have to change that listing. Buyer checking accept backup. I will change it to backup accepting under contract accepting backup offers, which is called UCB in our system. Now, seller, if in fact we get a cash offer that's a 2-week close and like a 3-day inspection period, you may not want to take any backup offers, and that's fine. If that's the case, I'm going to have you instruct me of that and tell me you don't want any backup offers. So what we're going to do is put it into something called pending, which stops the showing. Because at some point, my owner's probably going to go, well, when do we get to stop all these showings? Because I don't really want to have to maintain keeping my house show ready. So that's how you stop that, is doing pending, but that means we're not getting any backup offers, okay? Please understand, Matt, that our brokerage reserves the right to cancel the agreement unilaterally for cause, which includes but is not limited to our belief that some requests by you or regarding the listing may be a violation of applicable law. We have to protect our brokerage, and we're not obviously able to do that. And so if that were to happen, or we believe that that's what's happened, then my brokerage reserves that right to cancel the deal. And I would just move on, folks. You don't need to weigh in heavily at that. Again, I don't know if I've got a couple of people here. I'm going to just ask if anybody here has questions. Anybody online, you can try to unmute. I am not sure whether my computer, I can try to see what my volume here is. Oh, no, I'm on there. So I just don't know if the volume's working. Do either of you guys have questions?
Do verbal offers even count? Like if they, they're not sending proof of funds and sending everything? I mean,
so the question was, do verbal offers count? Yes, verbal offers count, but they are not enforceable until you get it in writing. So if you get a verbal offer that, let's say somebody calls and says, I want to offer $495, usually it's not where it's right next to the price, right? They're offering $450 to try and figure out if we will go anywhere near that. And if my client comes back, we've been on the market for, I don't know, 4 months, and the client comes back and says, you know what, put that together. Or, I would counter that at 465 or something like that. I could go back to them and say, if you want to put an offer together at 465, I think we might be able to make that happen. We need to see your other terms and conditions and where that money's coming from, right? So, but it's got to get in writing. Is it valid to present it? Yes, you can present a verbal offer. It cannot go to closing without being in writing. Okay. We were on the section of the ER. The question was, must you present the verbal offer? I have my clients check no verbal offers. But if you don't check that box and somebody calls you, yes, you must present that verbal offer. So that's why I check the box that says no. So because it doesn't have enough detail to give to the owner. And again, I had somebody call me, very, very nice agent, sweet lady, I have this great offer. It's wonderful. It's going to be full price, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then we finally get the written offer. It's contingent. Like, really think that's a really important point to share with us. Because, by the way, if any of you are doing contingent offers, you probably should lead with, will your seller accept a contingent offer? But let's get back to talking to my owner. This section is really important. It's the owner obligation. And this is the time I'm talking about what, again, they need to be doing, right? So, Matt, it's really important that you're going to allow access to this property. In order to get it sold, we need to be able to get into the property. I understand if you're working from home, we need to figure out when we can actually access it. So part of signing this is that you need to give opportunities for us to have showings and reasonable access to do that. Okay. Now, as the broker, we're not responsible for loss or damage to any of your personal property. My hope is that you, of course, have insurance on here, but there are lots of people that may enter this property and may take photos and videos of the interior of the premises. You're agreeing that you will take precautions to safeguard and protect your valuables. When we walked through, I noticed there were a few things and pointed those out to you earlier. I'm just reminding you that here, again, my hope is that you have insurance that is covering this. Our brokerage does not maintain insurance for your benefit. You have to have that insurance in place. And people that are visiting The premises may not be aware they could be recorded by either audio or video devices. So we understand that, but having the video and prosecuting that all becomes part of what you would have to deal with. We are supposed to post notice if there are security devices on the premises. So if you have a Ring doorbell, we probably need a sticker on that front window that says there's a Ring, there's video recording. But if you have something like a nanny cam or hidden security cameras, we should have something that says there are security cameras on the premises, especially if the Ring doorbell is not there. Obviously, the Ring doorbell's there. Hopefully, people would realize they are being heard, if not seen it, and also probably heard. By the way, if you're not aware, agents, those audios can pick up from across the street. So if you're talking to your clients, get into your cars and get out of the neighborhood if you know there's a Ring doorbell. All right. I need to make sure that the information you have disclosed to me, Matt, is covering, any material latent defects about the premises that you know about, right? So need to make sure if you know that it's connected to the sewer system or a septic or a septic tank, if there are any taxes, judgments, other types of liens, if you've ever had termites or any other type of wood destroying pests, if you've repaired the property, maybe wood damage from termites, please, all those things need to be detailed on your seller property disclosure statement. During the term of the agreement, if something were to happen regarding those things that I've just mentioned, you have to make sure that we're aware of it and we're updating those seller property disclosure statements. So that's really, really important that we communicate that to any buyer. It protects you in the long run, because if you don't disclose that and they find out, then the buyer can come back to address this. Now, we're going to talk about some other disclosures here, and the seller property disclosure statement is obviously one of the main ways we do that, but there are other other things we would have to disclose. So affidavit of disclosure, 9 times out of 10 agents, I'm telling my owner this doesn't apply because it is in an incorporated area. If you are working in unincorporated areas, there is an affidavit of disclosure required. So again, seller, we know that your property does not need the lead-based paint because it was built after 1978. If the well water addendum is something that we would need to do, there is a well water addendum for the seller property disclosures, specifically talking about well waters, or water well addendum, excuse me. Foreign investment owner, if you are not a U.S. citizen and you are a foreigner, we need to make sure that we look at this very carefully. The Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act has just changed, and the requirements are under something called FinCEN. So I will bring you my FinCEN information, because you'll need to be talking to title about that. It is important that you understand that you're responsible for obtaining your own legal and tax advice, but usually 15% of the purchase price can be withheld unless an exception applies. So we need to go over that. HOA condominium, we've already talked about this because you already called the HOA to try and get this information. But of course, we need to have the current monthly, semi-annual, or annual fees for your HOA. And we'll fill out that HOA addendum. I sent that to you via Breeze, so you can start both that and the seller property disclosure statements. Okay, agents, if you're not watching, I'm tying back into these other documents that I've either provided beforehand or I am going to provide, one of the two, right? But we probably have talked about these when we first met, even if it was just in general conversation. So owner, it's really important that you get a 5-year claim insurance history. All you have to do is call your insurance company and ask them for a claims history on your property. If you have had multiple insurance companies, you may need to call each of those. Even though you're no longer with that earlier company, you're going to need to call and ask for that. Okay. if we're dealing with leases, in this case, we're not, but if we were dealing with leases, then we would, oh, I'm sorry. This is saying if they're selling a property that has a lease on it, if there is a tenant in the property, that lease agreement needs to be available because it has to be passed on to the buyer because that lease agreement has to stay in place. So the other one is if this is a part of a lease, the resident lease owner's property disclosure, very similar to seller property disclosure. Some landlords don't want to use it. It's not required. I always recommend landlords do it the first time they list their property because that's the time they probably know the most of the property, and then remind them that they need to add things to it when they make repairs to the property. It was kind of funny. Obviously, seller property disclosure, that is something I always hand the owner on my first meeting to have them go over a printed version and ask them to prepare that. And then what I do is that I send them the spuds via the Breeze system so they can type it in. But I suggest that they prep it by using the actual printed form so they make sure they have everything. Other thing I recommend they do is that they create a folder on their computer where as they're looking through for all this data that they move over all the warranties that they have on the property so they're in one place when they get ready to fill out that seller property disclosure. They're able to quickly grab those. Now, number 10. So if I have not talked about this before I get to that ER, we've got a huge problem. Solar addendum. So if there's a solar system on the property, there is a solar addendum and they need to complete that. That solar addendum doesn't say much of anything. I have a solo info sheet that I require my owners fill out to know more about what that system is, what is entailed with it. Is it leased? Is it paid off? Is it a lease system that's paid off, but there's still a lease in place? So there are lots of variables there, and you need to know about those. It's not going to come on the ER. It's a separate document that we need to go over. And here we get to recommendations. Matt, if you need anybody to do your landscaping or maybe do a pre-inspection or any of that, I'm more than willing to give you my list of people to do some of those repairs. Please understand, I recommend that you independently investigate them and see whether you want to work with them. I work with lots of different companies, and while I would love to say that they all maintain their integrity over time, sometimes that doesn't happen. And so I just recommend that you look into those companies. Okay. And you agree that you will not allow a mechanics lien to be recorded. What that means is that if you hire any contractor, that they have to be paid prior to close of escrow to make sure that they don't file a mechanics lien. So here's a section I want to make sure we've got to get your initial on this, and this is indemnification to the listing broker, which is Realty One Group, right? Boards or associations and the multiple listing service or other brokers from liability and responsibility regarding that damage or loss. We talked about that earlier, but also from any misrepresentation or breach of warranty by the owner in this agreement, any incorrect information supplied by you, and any facts concerning the premises not disclosed or withheld, including without limitation facts known to you relating to adverse information or latent defects. Now, agents, I'm going to stop there right now. You do not have to read that out to them. This is one of those paragraphs where they're having to initial. Feel free to turn that around and say, look, this is one of the sections I need to make sure you initial. Please take a moment and read through this. Let me know if you have any questions. Because sometimes it's uncomfortable saying some of those words to their face, and you're like, oh my God, I'm saying don't lie to me, right? you don't lie to me. I mean, that's really what this is saying, right? So please turn it around. Let them look at it and say, look, can you please read this paragraph? I've got to have you initial. I need to make sure you understand that. It's indemnification on multiple levels here. We've gone over it in the beginning part of this listing, but I do need to make sure that you're understanding it, right? Any questions? No? Okay. All right. So remedies. This is fun, right? So what happens if you, Matt, and the listing broker end up having a dispute? So basically what ends up happening is it per this agreement, we start with something called alternative dispute resolutions. We don't immediately go to court. We go to try to figure out if there's a way to find a even ground or fair ground, right? That we're going to find a way to be able to resolve any dispute. Okay. And that again, it's goes through the American Arbitration Association. Both of us have to go forward to get an arbitrator. We each have to pay a little bit to get in to meet with the mediator or arbitrator. And that we agree that any and all disputes or claims will be brought in our party's individual capacity, not as a part of a class action lawsuit, right? Everybody's going away, trying to get away from class action lawsuits. The parties waive their right to commence, become a party to, or remain a participant in any group or class action suit. Okay. Funny thing, where do you think that came from, folks? Right? So, but actually, it was in there before. Well, no, I think it was probably done in 24. We'll have to see. So, if for some reason we can't resolve it as a part of an arbitration, then of course, if we end up in court, usually the prevailing party does win their reasonable attorney fees and costs. So that's not uncommon. Again, guys, you notice I did not read this line for line. I'm not going through this line for line and not going to. So you guys, but you need to go over this, right? If somebody says, well, what's an alternative dispute resolution? Means you go to an arbitrator or a mediator, somebody to look at both sides of what's going on and try to find a median spot that both parties can agree to. Okay. I can happily say in my 28 years, I've never had a listing come to that. So I'm hoping you guys don't either. But so there are several additional terms and conditions that I preset in a lot of my stuff. Okay, and I'm seeing a lot of folks write one of these other ones. So seller, what I have here is that the owner's instructing the broker to modify the ARMLS start date to match the date of the listing. It's put into ARMLS as active or coming soon, whichever is sooner. To me, this is on everything these days, because if I'm taking that ER in February and we're not going on the market till March, I have a gap. Okay. According to ARMLS, I have to put it down the date that I got that ER signed. If it's being signed, what is today, the 17th? If it's being signed on the 17th and I'm not going active until March 1st, I got a couple of weeks in there. I don't want to come on the market and show whatever that is, 14 days. I want to show 0 days. In order to put that 0 days, I have to have that additional term in my ER. Does that make sense? Okay. And then I do have, in this particular one, I do have, please consider rock title. I want the seller, oh, that's funny. Seller instructs owner. Owner instructs broker to add that. I've got to fix my phrase. Both buyer and seller receive 50% off, but I'm having the owner instruct the broker to put that into the ARMLS so that I have the conversation with the owner at this point saying, do you want me to put this in the MLS? If the other party agrees to this, both of you save 50% on your escrow fee. So that's to have that conversation with the seller to make sure I don't forget about it, right? So a lot of agents are struggling with the fact that we do not have an umbrella anymore in purchase or in commissions, that gosh, if there isn't another agent, I don't get my 6%. Well, okay, you can preset this to say if there's no other agent involved, it's just you being a dual agent. And if you're on your team, this doesn't count, right? So a dual agent, the total commission will then be increased. So you're not having to negotiate that through a seller compensation addendum, writing that offer. You already know, if you represent both buyer and seller, what your commission is. You can add that, folks. put that in additional terms and conditions. If that's important to you and you don't want to have the conversation when you've got somebody on the hook saying, well, I'm going to save 6% by using, you, and then I don't have to pay anything. Really, that's not how math works, okay? But a lot of people tend to think that. So if that's of concern, go ahead and do that. Okay, owner, neither the brokerage nor the owner can assign any rights or obligations of this agreement without the other party agreeing to it, right? Doesn't work that way. Arizona law covers this. This is a pretty simple contract, and hopefully you understood it, but it is in Arizona law, and that's the law governing this contract, okay? It is really important, owner, to understand that a part of this contract and a part of the purchase contract and all the documents included with this, that there is a very specific method of notification and delivery. Things must be delivered and they're received when either hand delivered, sent by fax. I know not many people use fax anymore, or sent by email, right? If email addresses are provided on this document. So if you as an owner don't want me to send you anything by email, we won't put an email address on here, but it means then that you have to make yourself available that I can deliver these things. Also, overnight courier or U.S. mail, in which case the notice shall be deemed received when it's actually received or 5 days after the notice is mailed, whichever occurs first. If you will note, owner, delivery does not include text messaging. And that is very intentional from the courts. Courts do not recognize text messaging as a way of sending and delivering messages. My personal opinion, I don't know this to be law, but is because you could be flying and not be able to receive those text messages, and you won't necessarily get them when you get to your destination. They just disappear. So please understand, if you're going to send me something, do not send it via text. It must be sent via email, okay? That is important, everybody, to know. Please do not tell me you've received an offer and it came via text, because you have not received anything, nor have you delivered anything if you're sending a counteroffer via text. It is not delivered, right? Everybody knows that. So, owner, it's really important you understand this gets confusing to people. For real estate transactions, days refer to all calendar days. Every day of the week, doesn't matter if it's holiday, doesn't matter if it's on a weekend. Now, there will be times when lenders will get involved and lenders will have days that don't count, which may be weekends. Weekends and holidays. But for the purpose of this listing agreement, days means every day of the week. If we're counting something, we are counting every single day. I understand one of you may be traveling. That's fine. We can sign things here together today, but if somebody has to sign a document separately, that's called counterpart. That's not a problem. It's still considered a part of the agreement. You each could sign two different documents, same document, but sign on different sets of those documents. It's considered in counterpart and fine. This is the entire listing agreement. There's the addenda that we've talked about. You're still filling out some of those disclosures, but that's all a part of this agreement. And it supersedes any other written or oral agreements. And we really have to have everything in writing. Changes to this must be done in writing. So the failure to initial any page or agreement does not affect the validity or terms of this agreement, just so you're aware of that. But we'll try to make sure you get all of that on here. So see, I did say Matt there. So owner, I need you to either fill in this, if I didn't fill it in already. I need to make sure we've got your address, city, state, zip, telephone, and email. Why do I need the email down there? Does anybody remember?
Title.
Mm-mm. If there's no email, what am I not allowed to do? Can't email anything to them. No, I can't email anything to them because it's specifically prohibited. If there's no email there, they have said they're not to receive any documents via email. Get that, folks? You've got to have your email down there, their email down there, okay? because it specifically said in this one here on notice, it says, as indicated in sections 11 and 12 and deemed delivered and received when. So it says sent via electronic mail if email addresses are provided herein. So if your seller is not providing their email address, or agents, if you don't write that email address in there, then technically you can't deliver anything via email to your client. And I'm guessing that's how you're delivering everything. So please make sure their email is on that page. All right, then you have your section, and you need to have your email, your telephone number. Please do not have our office telephone number there. Please do not have Ron's email in there. For some reason, sometimes that auto populates. And please do not miss on line 325 that your association needs to be on that top line. You are a member of what association or board? You cannot use these documents if you do not belong to a local association here in Arizona, okay? Because these are a part of our realtor documents through Arizona Association of Realtors. Okay, let's see if I have another page. I do not. Yeah. Are you a secondary with Phoenix?
Oh, no. Mark, when I do the contract.
Yes.
Phoenix, I'm
Yeah, that's fine. If you're both on there, that's not a problem at all. So the question was, if you have two agents and you belong to two different associations, can you put one and then the other? And sure, you can put we serve slash, do they do PAR now? I don't, PR? I don't know what they're doing as their acronym. Or you can put SAAR, which is Scottsdale Area Association of Realtors, or you can just put the word Scottsdale because Association of Realtors is on that next page here, if you see that. Whoops, where'd I go here? There you go. So it says association slash board. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hold on a second. If I can figure out how to do that. Wow, Zoom changed everything. Let me go back over to here. I have a whole bunch of people on. I would love for somebody to unmute and verify that I can actually hear you. Is anybody able to do that? Hi,
Hello.
Christina.
Hi. Can you hear me? Sorry.
I am not able to hear anybody. That is so bizarre. Hold on. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop recording here.